Welcome. We're in part C of the great strategy of leading effective discussions. So what are we going to be learning today? Here are the learning objectives for this session. Look at the part that's in black. Those are the things that you've already accomplished. Bravo. Now we got to go to the next part where you're going to take all the stuff that you've learned, all this content and strategies and thoughts and considerations, and put it into your classroom. So you're going to implement effective questioning strategies, and those are some of them. And you're also going to differentiate between different types of nonverbal communication. So we talked about the verbal, but the nonverbal are equally important. So here we go. I'm going to show you a picture of another person who was very good in leading discussions. Do you know who he is? No? Yes? It's Socrates. And who is Socrates? He's a Greek philosopher and teacher, and he proposed thoughtful questioning whenever having discourse. Discourse means discussions. And he says there are two parts. We have to examine the ideas logically and then to determine the value of those ideas. What is this called? He is known for doing the Socratic Method. You may have seen some of that. It is used very commonly in the law school and also in the case discussions in business schools. And why do I want to show you about the Socratic Method? Because it relies primarily on the top 3 levels of Bloom's taxonomy. This is something that you can use when the students are very comfortable with you. They trust you because you're going to be asking them questions on and on. You will stay with them for an extended period of time before you go to another individual. And so when you have that amount of trust and the students know the content particularly well, here's another method of leading discussions. So we're going to spend a greater part on the effective questioning skills, and we're going to focus on when and whom do you ask. So for effective questioning, we should think about when do you ask, and we talked about that a little bit before about when you script and you're doing your lesson plan. That means what are you going to do for a particular lesson. I want you to look over the time frame of 50 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes and say, is there a particular spot where it's needed for clarification or expansion of the topic? And that's where you would put that question on there. And remember the active learning strategy. Think about when would be a good time. If attention spans about 15 to 20 minutes, it might be helpful then to check in with the students and ask a question. The next step is for us to determine is to whom do you ask, and then how will you respond. So who do you ask? Well, let's take a feel, take a temperature of the room and see how comfortable it is and how supportive and welcoming. Well, one way you could start off is ask for volunteers. And it depends, though, this being very successful, about the content, how you set up the environment, and also how well the students know the content. And so it can also go very well, or you could be waiting a really long time for a response because the students aren't maintaining eye contact. So another way to do it is what we call a warm call. Now you can warm them up by having them do an activity, and you're walking around and you're listening in and you say, that is really good. That was really insightful. And matter of fact, when I go back up and bring the students back in a large group, I'm going to ask you that, okay? Now, the student will answer your question because you've already reassured them that they have the right answer. This is a great strategy. It's called a warm call. Now, at the opposite end is what we call a cold call. A cold call is an unannounced asking to answer the question. Say, Joe, Susie. Now, at times this can be a very stressful moment for the students. So think about ways in which your behavior can ease that stress. You can start down by doing warm calls and then moving up to cold calls. Again, if you set up the environment, then they will don't mind doing cold calls on there. Now, after you ask the question, what do you do? I'm going to tell you about a very important strategy to think about. Look at this. It is called wait time. And wait time means 3 to 5 seconds because you already know the question. You scripted the question. You know when you're going to answer the ask the question. But the students don't know any of this. They didn't see your lesson plan. So after you ask, wait 3 to 5 seconds. How long is 3 to 5 seconds? That's how long. 3 to 5 seconds. All right, do you understand that? Let's go to the next part. We're going to be focusing on how will you respond. Okay, we're going to have 4 scenarios for you to think about. I want you to get your piece of paper because this is another activity, and I want you to think about these 4 situations. No response. What are you going to do? You already did the obligatory 3 to 5 seconds in the wait time. I'll let you write. As you know, I always write too while you're doing it. I don't have you do all the work. And what I thought is make sure you have the wait time, which I reiterated, 3 to 5 seconds. Now, you don't have to worry about it if it's an easy question. You'll go faster than that. The students will probably go and tell you the answer before then. But if it's even more complex, then you may have to extend that wait time on there. Again, like I said, it depends, but typically 3 to 5 seconds works. No response, still no response. What you do is repeat. And you have to remind them, says, this is a really important question, so let me repeat it. There's still no response, then you rephrase it. Say it in a different way because maybe that first one wasn't as clear. And then finally, what you can do is give a prompt. A prompt is a hint. Well, remember when you did this? It's similar to that, and that is what we call a prompt. Let's go to the next scenario, which is the correct response. What do? That doesn't need any explanation. Praise them, and praise them by name. You do know the names of your students, do you? Because this is a great way to offer a welcoming environment where the students feel comfortable because they're not just one isolated person, but this is an individual that you know by name. The next thing you do is then repeat the correct portion of it so that all the students, in case they didn't hear what the student said, then you can repeat it. Let's go to the third scenario, which is a partially correct response. I'll give you 30 seconds. Write down what you do in this situation. Now, this is a little bit more difficult situation. So what do you need to do? Did your notes match mine? 1, praise the attempt. Really, you should do that. Just like you praise them for having a correct answer, you should praise them for trying. And explain where it's correct and incorrect, especially for the students, because maybe you're taking notes and you don't want them to go, oh, no, that's not it. Cross it out, cross it out. Explicitly say what is correct. Then you go through the same thing of repeat, rephrase, and prompt. Here's a more difficult situation where it's totally wrong. What are you going to do? Same situation, praise the attempt and explain where it's incorrect and do the final steps. If it's still not quite there, go ahead and ask another student and say, can you help student A over here? And if they get it right, praise them, repeat it, and then you go back to the first person and says, is it clear? Do you want to add anything more? Now, one thing I want to repeat is that always when the student says something, repeat it, because maybe that student is talking to you directly and you can hear them very well, but the other students may not. So after you do the question, do repeat what the response was. Now, those are your verbal feedback to them. We did talk about nonverbal. Let's talk about nonverbal that can either enhance, that means promote it, or discourage discussions, which means absolutely to shut down. So what are some of these nonverbal language things that you should be aware of? Look at the posture on there. Are you standing straight? Or you're like hunched over? Or you're leaning toward them? And whenever you do the eye contact, are you standing with a smiling face? And look at your posture when you're standing there. Look at this person here. Don't say that person looks like me. It's just a stranger in there. But I don't think that's a very welcoming one. That position where the hands are out like this, or even if the hands are crossed, what do you think your hands should look like? Like this? That means an opening one. Gesturing with your hands and the arms like this shows that you want them to continue talking. When you talk about the speech, think about the words that you're using. Are they threatening? Make sure they have warmth and support in the words, and the tone of voice is very important. Is there modulations on there? Does it go up at the end? And the clothing. Think about what you look like. Are you looking too formal, or don't look too relaxed in there? Think about the one where you set the distance, but you, as a teacher, but you also want the students to be part of this class discussion. Because in a class discussion, you are not the teacher. You are the facilitator of this question and answer series on there. And so think about this very clearly. It is on a continuum, and you have to make your decisions about what you do in terms of your nonverbal language. So, we're coming to the end, and I need to check on you. What did we learn today? I want you to put 3 parts on your piece of paper. Question 1, the types of questions. Strategy 2, when and whom do you ask? And strategies 3, how will you respond? Just for 30 seconds to a minute, put some of what you can remember in those 3 blocks. I'll wait for you. Okay, now we're back again, and I wrote some notes on there. Let's see if they match you. This is what I wrote. Using Bloom's taxonomy, using a Socratic questioning when you think it's appropriate, because this is a more in-depth discussion. There's opening and closing questions. There are open and closed questions. And don't forget, there's the what, how come, what if other questions too. Strategy 2, when and whom do you ask? What are some notes that you wrote down in this space? I wrote down this. Cold call, warm call. Also, there's volunteering. Wait time of what? 3 to 5 seconds, typically. Longer if it's a complex question. Scripting, repeat, rephrase, or prompt. How will you respond? Here are some things. Give very constructive, encouraging feedback. Tell them what is incorrect and what is correct on there. And make sure you check your verbal and nonverbal communication. So as we conclude, remember that it is the single most influential teaching act to impact your students' teaching and learning. And I want to acknowledge and reward you for the great work that you have just done, because these are the things that you have accomplished. Define the benefits. Describe the learning environment. Classify and correct different types of questions and appropriate questions. You were able to implement different questioning strategies, and you were able to differentiate between the different types of nonverbal communication, and you're off to a wonderful, effective student discussion with them. Thank you very much.